Okay. All your labs, and that includes 2 extra labs that aren't really labs. They're lab contract and also a waiver. Those count as a lab as well. So those will be your easiest points. And I think there are 12-ish of them. 12 times 15, it's 180 points. That's worth almost 2 tests. 2 tests. Now we're going to have 5 tests altogether. So that's 500 points worth of tests. And your labs will add up to be 180, assuming you get a 15 on all of them. Okay. The pre-lab is part of the write-up, not all of it, just part of it. And the lab write-up, the pre-lab part of it is going to be helping you organize yourself for doing the lab. So you're not here till 6 o'clock. So we're not here till 6 o'clock, I should say. You're going to be doing, I'll go over in a minute here, but it's for your organization and safety. All teachers in this department do this. It isn't just me. To some extent, some more than others, but basically this is what's going on in the whole department. Also, it's to be handwritten. Everyone in the department, every chem class you'll be doing handwritten labs. It's just, I do the same thing at Sac City. Every school I've taught at, and I've taught at a number of them, they all do this the same way. It's very universal. I don't know if physics does it or biology does, but I know all the chemistry departments I've worked at do this. Okay, I already talked about a composition book, no spiral bound, no 3-ring binder. Okay. You're going to have plenty of space in your lab book. So begin each new lab on the right side of a new page. All the pages need to be numbered. Now you can number as you go, or you can just sit there and number them all at one sitting. No pencil. A lot of people use pencil and then they write over it with their pen. That's called busy work. I don't like busy work. So just do it originally in pen. Now, this is something that's weird. A lot of people, especially OCD folks, don't like to have mistakes in their book. Mistakes are fine. I just need to be able to read everything in the notebook, including mistakes. So if you make an error, put a nice clean line through it so I can read it and make the correction above it or beside it, whatever. No whiteouts, no scribbles, okay? And a lot of people, especially certain people, just are real focused on having everything perfect in the notebook. It's not necessary. Now, some of you have horrible handwriting. I've got to be able to read it to grade it. My handwriting, as you know, isn't great either. But if I can't read it, I can't grade it. Now, in every class I've taught for at least 5-6 years, some people want to do it electronically. That's fine. If you have an iPad or something like that, that's fine. You can do it electronically. You still have to handwrite it, though. Okay? I'm fine with electronic. Now, some teachers won't allow it. You have to get the binder and all that, or the composition book, whatever. But in my class, if you want to do it electronically, that's fine. Now, if you do it electronically, you need to be able to create a PDF file of your lab. So make sure you know how to do that if you're going to do it electronically. And it depends on what application you're using. They all do it differently. If you're using Word, it's one thing. If you're using whatever, they just all do it differently. And they all save it in a different place as well. Now, if you're using it in the composition book, you're going to be using a scanner. Most people use a scanner on their phone because they're cheap. It's like $0. Some people have flatbed scanners at home. It doesn't really matter. You need to scan all the pages into one PDF file. Okay, so eventually, let's see, a week from next week, we're going to be using no harmful chemicals. The week after, though, you're going to have to start doing first aid for your chemicals. You find first aid in a document called SDS. SDS stands for Safety Data Sheet. In that, there are about 16 sections, and it's standardized internationally. Section 4 is first aid. That's what you need to concentrate on. Now, some of the labs are going to have a whole bunch of chemicals you're going to have to do first aid on. The single replacement, double replacement reactions have a whole bunch of chemicals. And you just have to find the first aid in each one. The easiest way to do it is online. For example, say we needed an SDS for copper sulfate. Let's see here. Fisher is always a good one to use. Okay. So section 1 is identification. It's just, now in your 1A class or 2A class, you're going to have to do a little triangle with squares in it to identify the hazard level. You don't have to do that in here. Section 4 is first aid. So now, if you, let's say we use copper sulfate next week, and then the week after, we're going to use it again. You don't have to repeat the first aid. Just say, see lab 3 or whatever. You don't have to repeat it. Also, if you have a number of chemicals that have the same first aid, you don't have to repeat it each time. Just put at the top of your chemical list, just put commas in between. The copper sulfate, copper nitrate, copper oxalate, those are all going to have the same first aid. So you don't have to repeat it 3 times. Okay, again, cut down there's enough writing as it is. I'm going to cut down on busy work. By the way, the clock now is officially works. Okay. We're not doing any graphs in here. I use this lab procedure for my organic class, my 1A class, my 2A class, my 3A class, and Chem A and Chem 300 over at Stack City. So there they graph, but we're not graphing in here. So if you were going to graph, this is the way I want you to do it. Basically, it's large graphs. Okay, so this is a typical scanned lab. This person happens to tab it, which is really handy to jump around. You're going to get 2 signatures per lab from me. This one here is for your, whether you've done your pre-lab or not. Okay, that's worth 3 points. 3 points. This is for cleanup. Before you leave the lab, you need to have me look at your area to make sure it's clean. So you're getting 2 signatures each time. And then I'm going to be grading them online. So you won't have that there. I'm going to be grading them online and you'll get your online grade. Okay, so let's look at this. Title. What's the name of the lab? Okay, purpose. Why are we doing this lab? I know all of you are going to say, because I love doing labs, it's so much fun. Okay, what the purpose of doing the lab is, there's always a background on all the wet labs. They'll introduce the chemistry of the lab. That's where you find the purpose. And the purpose doesn't have to be a paragraph like this person. It can be 2 sentences is fine. If you want to write a paragraph, that's fine. But at least a couple sentences. If there is first aid, that comes next. Then the procedure. Now the procedure can be really long or fairly short. It just depends on the lab. Notice this person wrote on both sides and see how it bleeds through. Depends on the paper and it depends on the ink you use. Now, regarding the procedure, some people say, can I abbreviate? Yes, you can. You can summarize the procedure if it's summarizable. Sometimes it's pretty short, but if you can summarize it, that's fine. Does someone have a question? Okay. All right. Sometimes there are pre-lab questions. Those need to be answered if you have pre-lab questions. You don't always have pre-lab questions. Okay, and then the other thing is a data table. Sometimes the labs will supply you with a data table, and other times you have to make one. It just depends on who wrote the lab. It varies a lot. The purpose of the lab is a place for you to put your data. So when the procedure, if you see something like record, observe, those are 2 key verbs that point to a data table. So you should have a place in your data table for those. Units. Rarely in chemistry, a number does not have a unit associated with it. An example would be pH, for example. pH doesn't have a unit associated with it. But most of the time, there is a unit. Now, in your data table, you can do that 1 or 2 ways. You can do it each time, or you can just put it at the top, like, and then just put numbers down there. Somehow you have to associate the number with a unit, though. I don't know if that temperature is Fahrenheit, Celsius, Rankine, or Celsius, or Kelvin. All those are temperature units that are not the same. So I need to know, for example, if you're listing temperature, most of the time it's going to be centigrade or Celsius, but not always. Sometimes it's going to be in Kelvin, especially when you get to your next chemistry class, particularly. Now, this person filled in all this space, empty space. You don't have to do that. If you want to do that, it's fine. The old way of doing Chem write-ups is every space that doesn't have writing in it, you got to go like that. I know, it's stupid in my opinion. But anyway, also put a 0, start putting a 0 before the decimal point. Because some teachers will require it. If you're in allied health, going into nursing or oral dentistry or something like that, you're going to be required to do that. You might as well get in the habit of just doing it. I do it all the time. And there's an interesting story about putting a 0 in front and decimal points. In Washington State, and all over the country, but the ones in Washington State I'm aware of. There's a hospital up there called Swedish Hospital, and it's mainly a pediatric hospital. And 2 babies have died there over the last 40 years or so because of a decimal point problem. Is the decimal point was either left off or added. So the prescription formulations were wrong and the infants died. It's a real tragedy. So it's important to make sure, because in labs, you frequently use water. Even in modern labs now where everything's electronic and on it, still use water. And water gets on paper, it usually leaves a dot. Well, a dot could be from water could be construed as a decimal point. So anyway, so just get in the habit of writing this. If the number is less than 0, and you'll notice in your labs, they follow that same thing. The number is less than 1, put a 0 there. You need a materials list. Materials list can go before the procedure, after the procedure, it doesn't matter. Also, some teachers will want you to do a drawing of your apparatus setup. So if you have a ring stand, let's see, on the first lab next week, lab 3, you don't need a drawing, but the next one you do, because you're going to be filtering some things, and so you need to have that set up. Here's another example of a data table. Notice this person put the units at the top and throughout the whole thing. I just need it either place. Notice here, didn't put a 0 there. Okay, and then after you do the lab, fill out your data table, you're going to need to do a two things: a conclusion. Every lab needs a conclusion. Every wet lab needs a conclusion. You have to have a conclusion, period. That's also worth 3 points. Also, you need to answer, there's always post-lab questions on every lab. Those need to be answered. And those typically you put before the conclusion. If it's not, if you forget about them and put them after the conclusion, it's not a big deal. But normally they go before the conclusion. Post-lab questions. Okay, so that's it. It's depending on the lab, this takes some time, but it's not hard. And I would suggest doing it in pieces rather than all at once, because your arm will hurt. Right. You got a question? Sorry. Okay. All right. Yeah. That, on the particular chemical, like the one I gave you. It will say in the procedure, you know, say 5 milliliters of copper sulfate. So you go, oh, look, so I need to look up the first aid for copper sulfate. And SDS is, I'm trying to think, I think the SDS is in the lab room, a book of them, but the easiest way is just look it up online. And all of them are going to be the same, you know, from different manufacturers. The first aid is going to be the same, and it's section 4. Now, if you're pregnant, trying to become pregnant, or breastfeeding, you need to go to another section of the SDS. That's section 11. Section 11 will talk about the teratogenicity, which causes birth defects, or the carcinogenicity, which causes cancer. So if you're pregnant, you need to be aware of that, or breastfeeding, or trying to become pregnant. Yeah. I'm sorry, what? The instructions? Yeah, it's going to be, just go to modules. And there's the video will be posted there. And there's another video there. It's probably 2 videos there already on doing that, for sure. But today's lecture on this will be posted today. And it's under modules. It'd be under lab related. Okay, I'll get to that, and I'll jump over to that actually. So we go to modules, lab related. See, here's two videos on the lab write-up. And they'll basically say the same thing I just said. But I just wanted it specific for you guys. So at the bottom here will be the new one for today. It's in both. Actually, let me back up. It's modules will pull from files and pages. So if it's a video, I have to make a page rather than a file. So that's why it's easier to go to modules, because you don't have to worry about whether it's a... You didn't find it in modules?
No. But did you say you didn't post it yet?
You go on to lab related. Keep going.
Wait.
Yeah, see, there's 2 there.
Oh, right, Lab Writeup.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
But ours is going to be at the bottom though. It'll be right there once I post it. It'll be under that.
Conclusions. Okay, we have to write conclusions. Everybody writes a paper.
Correct. All I want, okay, there's a question on conclusion. Everyone's in the beginning is kind of confused about conclusion. All I want you to do is just summarize what you've done. There's no magic there. Okay. And like he was saying, well, everyone's going to be doing it differently. That's right. That's okay. I expect at least 2 or 3 sentences. You can write more, but at least 2 or 3 sentences. In other words, a small paragraph for your conclusion. Yeah. Some labs will have that, some won't. Okay. Interpret results and discussions as conclusion. Because when I see that, just write a conclusion, it'd be fine. Okay. Yeah, and some of the labs will have a results and conclusion. It depends on what lab it is, and they vary a lot. If you see that, they're just asking you to write a conclusion. They call it discussion, but it's a conclusion. So either one's fine. And if you label it results and conclusion, I'll interpret that, you meaning that's a conclusion. So it's fine. I just want you to bring the lab together. It's like bringing closure to your lab. Right up. Okay. Okay, the parts of the pre-lab write-up are title, purpose, first aid, if there's any chemicals that need to be first aid, procedure, and a data table. That's what I'm looking for. Title, purpose. Here, let me just write it down. Okay, so okay, so pre-lab title, purpose, first aid if appropriate, materials, procedure, data table. No, the data table, just a place to put the data. Usually it's pretty easy to figure that out when you're reading the procedure. It's not too bad. Um, and if you you can change your data table when you get into the lab, say, oh, I forgot to put down a place for the mass of the beaker. You can just add it. It's not a big deal. But I want you to start by having a data table. Yes, exactly. Yeah. In other words, if there's no chemicals other than water, you don't have to write a first aid. Now there's an SDS available for water, by the way, because if you don't have enough of it, it's deadly. Or if you have too much of it, it's deadly. So, so there is one, but I think it was originally written as a joke. But anyway, all right. So, any more questions? Okay, so let's go ahead and end this.